right, boys and girls, once you've completed adding all of the cut pieces to create the features of your plush creature, you'll be ready to sew. Now, it doesn't matter what your plush creature looks like, what shape it's in. The process for completing it, for sewing the two pieces of felt together, is the same process for everybody. So initially, you should have cut out two pieces that were the same shape. One of these is going to become the back of your creature, and the front one is the one where you have attached all the cut pieces to create the features of your piece. Once you have those done, you are ready to go ahead and get started. You need to collect a needle, those will be at your table, and a piece of thread in a manageable length for you to be able to sew with. The needle at all times, unless you're actually physically sewing with it, should be on this piece of little green foam, so that way if you happen to drop it, it's easily visible. We don't want to have a needle that we drop without that, because if it rolls to the floor or somewhere on the table underneath something, they can be really hard to find, and then that becomes a safety concern. So at all times, unless you are actually physically sewing, you need to make certain that you have that piece of green foam on your needle piece. We're going to be attaching our two pieces. We're going to be combining these two pieces together with a whip stitch. So a whip stitch is something that looks like this. So a whip stitch is such that you are sewing with the thread on the needle, and you're going around and around and around the outer edges all over the perimeter of your piece. It's a pretty easy stitch. It's a nice decorative stitch, and we're gonna try to combine our two pieces, merge our front and our back together to create a closed form with this whip stitch. You're going to sew most of it, but you're going to leave a little opening so that way we can add some stuffing inside, and then you'll continue and you'll finish sewing the remainder of the piece. Once you're ready to start joining these two pieces together, our first step is to take the needle, again with the green foam on that needle, and take one end of your string. You want to try to thread the string through the eye of the needle. So you want this string to pass through the eye of that needle. Now this is a little too close for it to get terribly in focus, but one thing that you do want to do is carefully hang on to that needle, and then you're going to insert this thread in the eye of the needle. So once you have it partially through, go ahead and pull it the rest of the way through. You can see that we've got that thread running through the eye of the needle. Take the end that is passed through the eye of the needle, and you want to keep pulling it through. Be careful that your string isn't going to be tangling on you. You want to pull it through so you get the two ends of your thread at the same length. So sometimes the easier way is to take both ends, line those up, and then just simply, gently, carefully pull those through so that way they end up at the same length. So then that way you've got your needle threaded, the thread is through the eye of the needle, and you've got the two ends there. Now this piece is too long for me to show you the entire thing on the camera screen, but I'm certain that you guys get the idea. There's really no need to tie a knot, because what we're going to do is we're going to tie a knot at the end of this string, and it's going to be a hidden knot on the inside of the two pieces of felt that are together. So what we're going to try to do, here's an illustration of it. You're going to pass, this is only for the first time, you're going to pass your threaded needle through one layer of the felt, the layer that's on the top, pass it all the way through, and then tie a knot at the end of that, so that knot's nice and thick, and it's too thick for it to pass through that felt. So it saves us from having to tie a knot on the outside. The knot's going to be hidden on the inside, and it helps keep your project nice and neat. So here we go. So I'm ready to sew. Obviously, if I try to sew with this on there, that's not really going to work. So now is the time when you need to remove that piece of foam. Set that to the side. Don't lose that, because you need to have that handy for later, okay? And we're going to be ready to go ahead and start that first knot. Now I'm not going to pass through both layers. I'm going to peel this top layer, this bottom layer back. And in fact, if it's easier, what you can do is just set this one to the side. You don't really need that quite yet. And not at the very edge. I'm not going to go to the very edge. I'm going to go in just a little bit, and I'm going to pass that needle through. I'm going to pierce through that layer of felt. And you can see that the needle is starting to go through. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to carefully pull my string through, and this is why we want a manageable size piece. We don't want anything that's too long because it starts to get tangled. And once I'm almost to the end, I'm going to set my needle down. Again, I'm not sewing. Put it right here on that piece of green foam, and I don't have to worry about it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a knot here at the end. I'm going to encourage you guys to do a double knot. So you can just wrap it around your finger like so, and then tuck the two ends through that hole. And I'm going to go ahead and make that knot. I don't know if that's going to be quite big enough to prevent it from passing through there. So I'm going to do that same process one more time. And I'm going to try to target to get that knot at the same spot. So now we've got this nice big knot. And if I go ahead and try to pull this through the rest of the way, you can see that that makes that stay. Now don't test it, horribly strongly. Don't try to pull it through to see, oh gosh, well, I was able to get it through, because you're likely to rip a hole in your felt, and that's not what you want to have happen. So just make it nice and snug up to there. Don't worry about trimming this. This is going to be kept on the inside of our sewn piece, so no one really needs to see that. So now I'm ready to go ahead and sew. I'm going to take my back panel and I'm going to line the two up the best that I can. And now that knot is going to be hidden on the inside. Okay. Now I'm ready to go ahead and sew. Go ahead and remove that piece of green foam and set that to the side. Again, you don't want to lose that. And now I'm ready to do the whip stitch. Remember, the whip stitch is where you are simply taking and you're going around and around and around and around the two edges of the piece together. So take the thread, and I always go from under, pushing away from me. I try not to sew with my needle pointed towards my finger because I can't really always see what the needle's doing. So I feel that it's a little bit safer to go away from you. So pierce through both layers, and then go ahead and carefully bring the two strings through there. You want to go nice and slowly because the thread sometimes tends to fall in on itself, and that's when tangles can start to happen. So now the thread's on the top, it's come out the top, and then I'm going to pierce from below through both layers again. So pull through, pull through, pull through. Sometimes this happens where you can see it wraps around the edge of the corner if you have a corner of the piece. Be aware of that. Just untuck it from the edge, and there we go. So bring it back down. So from below, pierce through, and then pull, pull, pull. Just like that.